Well, I'm trying to teach people a form of art that anybody can do. This is art for anyone who's ever wanted to put a dream on canvas.
Bob Ross was more than just a man with a brush and a gentle voice. He was the calm in many people's storms, painting happy little trees while hiding some not-so-happy truths of his own. Behind the soft tone, Bob carried heavy burdens, painful health battles, family troubles, and a quiet war with those closest to him. His final days weren't as peaceful as his paintings made life seem. And now, after all these years, hidden parts of his story are finally being revealed. Join us as we take a closer look at the man behind the smile and the heartbreak behind his final brushstrokes. A boy with big dreams and a kind heart. Bob Ross was born in Daytona Beach, Florida. His dad, Jack, was a carpenter, and his mom, Ollie, worked as a waitress. He grew up in Orlando, and from a young age, he had a soft heart for animals. He would care for injured ones like snakes, armadillos, squirrels, and even alligators. One of his favorite squirrels later appeared in some episodes of his painting show.
Okay, I guess we have to go to work, guys. Hey, you ready to go to work? Okay.
Bob also had a half-brother named Jim, whom he once mentioned on TV. But Bob's school life wasn't long. He dropped out in the 9th grade. After that, he worked as a carpenter with his father. While working, he had a bad accident and lost part of his left index finger. But it didn't stop him from painting years later. He was still able to hold his palette just fine. Bob's early life wasn't easy, but it shaped the calm and caring person the world would one day know. And soon, he would leave home to begin something no one expected, joining the military. The Air Force, Alaska, and a new path. At just 18 years old, Bob Ross joined the United States Air Force in 1961. He became a medical records technician. He worked hard and eventually became a master sergeant. He was sent to Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. That's where Bob first saw the snowy mountains and icy scenes that would later show up in many of his paintings. While he was in the military, he didn't have a lot of time, but during short breaks from work, he practiced painting. He learned how to work fast and create scenes quickly. Bob had to act tough while in the military. He said he was the guy who makes you scrub the latrine and the guy who screams at you for being late. He didn't like that side of himself. So he made a promise that when he left the military, he would never raise his voice again. And he kept that promise. Bob stayed in the Air Force for 20 years. But during that time, something else started to grow inside him. A love for painting. And it would change everything. The joy of painting. While still in the Air Force, Bob took an art class at a USO club in Anchorage, Alaska. But he didn't always agree with his teachers. They focused on abstract art and didn't really explain how to paint things like trees or mountains. Bob once said, "They'd tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree." One day, while working part-time as a bartender, he saw a TV show called The Magic of Oil Painting by Bill Alexander. Bill used a technique called alla prima, also known as wet on wet. It let him finish a painting in 30 minutes. Bob loved it. He studied the style, practiced hard, and started selling paintings of Alaska's beauty on gold mining pans. These paintings sold so well that Bob ended up earning more than he did in the military. That's when he decided to retire from the Air Force in 1981. He moved back to Florida and trained under Bill Alexander. He also joined Bill's art company as a teacher and salesman. During one of his painting sessions in Clearwater, Florida, a woman named Annette Kowalski attended. She believed Bob had something special. She, her husband, Walt, Bob, and Bob's wife put all their savings together to start a company. In the beginning, the business was tough. Haircuts were too costly, so Bob permed his hair to save money. He actually didn't like the hairstyle, but couldn't change it because it became part of his brand's logo. Then, in 1982, a station in Virginia aired his painting class as a test episode, and that was the spark. Within a year, 60 PBS stations had signed up. In 1983, PBS station WIPB invited him to Muncie, Indiana. They offered creative freedom. and Bob felt at home with the staff. Though he moved back to Florida in 1989, he kept flying to Muncie every few months to film his show. Bob didn't earn money from the show itself. He did it for free. His income came from how-to books, videotapes, and art supplies. His show ran from 1983 to 1994 and is still watched around the world today. More than just a painter. On The Joy of Painting, Bob created beautiful scenes in real time.
Call it a day. This painting's about finished, so I hope you really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you again next time.
He used simple tools, a limited set of colors, and painted from his imagination. He never used sketches. He made the process easy to follow and always kept things positive. People found peace in his calm voice and gentle words. Artist Mira Shore once said Bob was a lot like Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Soft-spoken, kind, and slow-paced.
Let's build a little mountain. I'm going to take some Prussian blue and alizarin crimson.
Behind the scenes, Bob and the Kowalskis grew the brand into a $15 million business called Bob Ross, Inc. His show helped promote his art supplies and classes, which were taught by other artists trained in his style. Bob didn't just love painting. He loved animals too. He often took care of injured squirrels and filmed them in his garden. Some even appeared in his paintings. Bob created about 30,000 paintings in his life. Even though there are many, they're hard to find on the market. When one does show up, it usually sells for thousands, and sometimes even over $10,000. Bob Ross, Inc. still owns many of the pieces he painted on the show. Bob didn't want his work turned into something only rich people could buy. He believed his art was for everyone. His very first painting on TV, A Walk in the Woods, was sold in a pledge drive. It ended up in the hands of Ryan Nelson, an art dealer in Minnesota. He's asking nearly $10 million for it. But most of Bob's fans aren't rich collectors. They just love his calm spirit and his work. Most of the paintings available now are from before the show started. The unique way Bob Ross painted. Bob Ross used a special method called wet-on-wet painting. This technique allowed him to paint over wet paint without waiting for it to dry. That's why he was able to finish a full painting in just one episode. It also helped beginners paint easily without needing expensive tools. Bob often used large brushes, like 1-inch or 2-inch brushes, and painting knives. These made it easy to create trees, mountains, and water scenes quickly. He kept things simple, only using a few colors and basic tools. When it came to cleaning, Bob preferred using odorless paint thinner. It helped clean the brushes without leaving a strong smell. Behind the scenes, Bob actually painted 3 versions of every painting he showed on The Joy of Painting. The first version was done before filming and was placed off-camera. Bob used it as a reference while painting the second version, the one viewers saw during the episode. After filming, he painted a third, more detailed version for his instructional books. Each canvas was labeled to show which one it was. Kowalski was written on the first version. TV was written on the one painted during the show. And book was for the version made for his books. Even though his method seemed simple, there was a lot of care and planning behind every brush stroke. Bob always made it look easy. But he worked hard to make sure his viewers could follow along. Section 2. His style, phrases, and painting world. Bob Ross had a style that made him stand out. He spoke softly, moved slowly, and talked to the camera like he was speaking to just one person.
One little thing that sometimes is fun. Maybe we'll put some little things out here in the water.
He often wore plain light shirts and jeans in every episode. He wanted to keep his look simple and timeless. He became famous for the things he would say while painting. One of his most loved lines was, "Let's add some happy little trees." He would often clean his brush by dipping it in thinner and then hitting it against a box or trash can. As he did this, he would say with a smile, "Let's beat the devil out of it." He used a palette that was lightly sanded so it wouldn't reflect the studio lights. Bob once shared what painting meant to him. "I got a letter from somebody here a while back, and they said, 'Bob, everything in your world seems to be happy.' That's for sure. That's why I paint. It's because I can create the kind of world that I want, and I can make this world as happy as I want it. Shoot, if you want bad stuff, watch the news." His paintings often showed nature scenes, snowy mountains, calm lakes, and peaceful cabins. These scenes were inspired by his years in Alaska when he served in the Air Force. He believed everyone had the talent to be an artist. He often told viewers, "We don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents." Bob rarely painted people or signs of life in his artwork. Sometimes he would add a small cabin or a barn, but usually they had no smoke coming from chimneys and no people in sight. He wanted people to imagine their own stories. He often talked about animals that might live in the scenes, birds, cows, or deer, and encouraged viewers to think about them as part of the painting. A blog called 538 studied 381 of Bob's episodes. They found that 91% of his paintings had at least one tree, 44% had clouds, 39% had mountains, and 34% had mountain lakes. Bob said he made more than 30,000 paintings in his lifetime, and each one came from a place of peace and joy. Section 3. Bob Ross, Beyond the Easel. While Bob Ross was known for painting, he also appeared in other forms of media. In 1987, he went on stage with country singer Hank Snow at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. The crowd gave him a big cheer. Bob felt a little nervous at first, but after making a joke, he relaxed. He even gave Hank Snow a private painting lesson later. Bob also visited New York City to promote his book, The Best of the Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. He gave live painting lessons in front of studio audiences. In 1989, he appeared on The Joan Rivers Show and showed off his painting skills. In 1992, he went on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee for a special painting event. Then, in 1994, Bob joined The Phil Donahue Show, where he helped 5 audience members paint right on stage. Even Donahue gave it a try. In the early 1990s, Bob also filmed short promos for MTV. These fun appearances connected him with a younger generation who enjoyed his calm energy and retro style. Sadly, in 1995, Bob was already ill when he made his last TV appearance. He appeared on a pilot episode of The Adventures of Elmer and Friends, a children's show that would later premiere in 1996, a year after his death. In that episode, Bob shared a final message with his fans and a heartfelt thank you. There was also a musical tribute included. Even during his final days, Bob stayed kind, gentle, and full of love for his viewers. Through every brushstroke, every quiet word, and every happy little cloud, Bob Ross left behind a world that still brings peace to millions. And what happened behind the scenes in those final years may surprise you even more. Love, family, and privacy. Bob Ross was married 3 times in his life and had 2 children. One of his children was born from a relationship he had when he was a teenager. His second child, Robert Stephen Steve Ross, was with his first wife, Vivian Ridge. Steve wasn't just Bob's son. He was also a painter. He even appeared on The Joy of Painting from time to time. In the last episode of Season 1, Steve joined his dad on camera and read out questions from fans. Bob answered each one while painting a new scene. It was a special moment between father and son. But Bob and Vivian's marriage didn't last. They divorced in 1977, and it was said to be because of Bob's unfaithfulness. Bob then married Jane, his second wife. They didn't have any children together. Sadly, Jane passed away in 1992 after a battle with cancer. Just 2 months before his own death, Bob married Linda Brown, his third and final wife. Bob was a private person. He didn't share much about his personal life, even though he was loved by millions. He didn't do many interviews, and even those close to him didn't talk much. A few of them spoke in the 2011 PBS documentary Bob Ross, the Happy Painter. But most of his life remained out of the spotlight. Even the company he helped build Bob Ross, Inc., has continued to protect his privacy. Bob wasn't part of any organized religion, but he did believe in a higher power. Many times at the end of his shows, he would say, "God bless," as a gentle goodbye to his viewers. Speaking of which, did you know that Bob Ross had health problems for many years? Illness, silence, and a secret goodbye. He had been a cigarette smoker most of his life and believed he wouldn't live long. In the early 1990s, he was diagnosed with lymphoma, a serious type of cancer, but he kept it a secret. Most people didn't know he was sick. Only his close friends and family were aware. Even as he was battling the illness, Bob kept painting. He stayed calm and kind, just like always. On July 4th, 1995, Bob Ross passed away in Orlando, Florida. He was only 52 years old. He died from complications related to lymphoma. At the time of his death, he had already prepared 7 paintings for a possible new season of The Joy of Painting. These were supposed to be part of season 32, but he never got the chance to film them. Bob was laid to rest at Woodlawn Memorial Park in Gotha, Florida. His grave has a simple plaque that reads, "Bob Ross, television artist." Even though his show ended over a year before he died, the public didn't know the reason until later. The world didn't find out about his cancer until after he had passed. Bob had chosen not to share it. He didn't want sympathy or attention. Instead, he let his soft voice, his peaceful landscapes, and his happy little trees be his goodbye. You see, Bob Ross had spent 11 years on public television, filming over 400 episodes of The Joy of Painting.
There's a lot going on besides painting, and I think people are aware of that and they enjoy that.
His soft voice, gentle style, and kind nature became part of many people's daily lives. Even after he was diagnosed with cancer, he kept filming for almost 2 more years before stepping away to focus on his health. When he passed away on July 4th, 1995, the public was heartbroken. Most fans didn't even know he had been sick, so the news came as a shock. Singer Lady Keir told people that same year he combined television with hypnosis and craft. You couldn't help noticing him. He became part of the pop mainstream. His nice little clouds were my favorites. For years, Bob had painted peace, hope, and comfort. Now he was gone, but the love people felt for him only grew stronger. Fans remembered the way he made them feel, calm, safe, like anything was possible. And as the years passed, more and more people began to discover him all over again. But after his death, the fight over Bob's legacy began. The business that changed everything. You see, Bob Ross was not just a TV artist. He was also a business partner. In 1985, he started a company called Bob Ross, Inc. with his wife Jane and their friends Walt and Annette Kowalski.
I'd like to introduce you to my partner and longtime friend, Annette Kowalski. Annette, welcome to the show.
Each of them owned an equal share. Things worked smoothly for a while and the company grew fast. But in 1992, Jane passed away. According to the company's rules, when a partner dies, their shares get split between the others. That's how Bob lost power in his own company. Now it was 2 against 1. The Kowalskis held most of the control. Even though the company was named after him, Bob became a minority shareholder. He had little say in how things were run. The Kowalskis focused on building the Bob Ross brand, especially selling painting supplies. At first, it seemed like teamwork, but behind the scenes, the balance of power had shifted. And when Bob got sick, that shift became the start of something much darker. The business that carried his name was no longer in his hands. And with his health getting worse, things began to spiral. That's when the real fight began. One Bob didn't want, but couldn't ignore. Pressure, pain, and a final wish. When Bob Ross found out he had cancer, he knew he didn't have much time left. But even while he was battling lymphoma, he was still being asked to make decisions, serious ones. According to those close to him, the Kowalskis tried to pressure him into signing away full rights to his name and image.
I'm using alizarin crimson, and I'll just sketch a little pot.
They wanted legal control over everything Bob had created. His face, his voice, his paintings. But Bob refused. He didn't want them to own his legacy. Near the end of his life, he updated his will. He left all rights to his name and likeness to his son Steve Ross and his half-brother Jimmy Cox. Bob wanted the people who truly loved him to carry on his name, not a company that now felt more like a business machine. But it didn't turn out that way. After Bob died in 1995, the Kowalskis challenged the will. They claimed that Bob Ross, Inc. already owned everything related to Bob's image and work, and in court, they won. The judge ruled that Bob had no right to pass those things down because they were works for hire. That meant the company, run by the Kowalskis, already had legal control. The happy accident of going into business with them had become a nightmare. Bob was gone, and now his family had nothing. The company used his name, his face, and his voice, but Steve, his own son, was pushed to the side. The cost of fighting. After losing his father, Steve Ross didn't just feel grief, he also felt helpless. He had tried to honor his dad's final wishes, but the court's decision left him with no control. Steve wanted to paint, to teach, to carry on Bob's message, but instead he felt afraid of being sued for using his father's name or style. So he stepped away from public painting. He stayed silent for years. Fans of Bob Ross had no idea this was happening. They kept watching the joy of painting, enjoying the peace and calm it brought. But behind the scenes, the family that Bob trusted the most was locked out of his legacy. In 2021, the Netflix documentary, Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed finally revealed the full story.
The documentary, titled Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed, centers heavily on Ross's relationship.
It showed how the legal battle affected Steve and Jimmy. The public began to learn that not everything was as perfect as it had seemed on screen. Bob's smile, his soft voice, even his famous hair, many parts of his image were carefully shaped for the show. He once had a regular haircut, but permed it to save money on trims. That permed hairstyle later became part of the brand, and Bob couldn't change it, even though he secretly hated it. His voice, calm and soothing, was practiced. It was meant to feel close, like he was whispering just to you. He used the word we instead of I to seem humble, even though he was the one doing all the work. As one person put it, there was an ego at play, one he tried to hide. But despite the fame, the shows, and the company, Bob stayed focused on one thing: painting. Talent is a pursued interest, he once said. He believed that anyone could paint if they truly wanted to. He didn't believe it was about natural talent or magic. He just believed in effort and joy. That's what he shared with the world. That's what made people fall in love with him. And yet, even with all that love, his name was taken from his family. But time has a way of changing things. A legacy rebuilt and a new beginning. In 2012, Walt and Annette Kowalski stepped down from Bob Ross, Inc. Their daughter, Joan Kowalski, took over. At first, she followed the same path, continuing to use Bob's name to sell painting products. But over time, Joan expanded the brand into something bigger. Bob Ross's face started showing up on coffee mugs, t-shirts, puzzles, even cereal boxes. He was suddenly everywhere. A new generation began to discover him online, on YouTube, on streaming platforms. The company was making money, but the man who started it all was still missing from the picture: his son. That's when Joan did something surprising. She reached out to Steve Ross and Jimmy Cox. They made a deal. The company would keep the legal rights to Bob Ross's name and image, but in return, Steve would be free to paint again.
So, I'd like to introduce you today to my son, Steve. Steve, glad to have you with us.
Well, thanks, Dad.
To teach again, without being sued. It was a small but powerful step. Joan also helped bring one of Bob's last ideas to life. Bob had prepared 7 new paintings for a 30-second season of The Joy of Painting, but he died before filming it. Joan helped launch a new version of the show using those paintings. A certified Bob Ross instructor named Nicholas Hankins became the new host. It was a way to honor Bob's unfinished work. The world may have changed, but Bob's message stayed the same. "In our world, we only have happy accidents," he used to say. And to his fans, it really felt like our world. Bob created a space where people felt safe, calm, and capable. Even though many people who watched his show never picked up a brush, they still felt inspired. They felt like they could do anything. "You could have gone pro. You should write a book," he'd say. Words of encouragement with no strings. That's what made him special. He didn't ask for anything, he just gave. And even though he's gone, Bob Ross continues to live in reruns, in peaceful painting videos, and in the hearts of millions. But behind all the smiles and happy trees was a story filled with control, loss, and a family nearly erased. And that's the part of Bob Ross's story the world is only just beginning to understand. A pop culture icon like no other. Even decades after his death, Bob Ross is still everywhere. His image has been seen in movies, TV shows, and even video games. Shows like Family Guy, The Boondocks, and Deadpool 2 have all featured jokes or scenes inspired by him. He even showed up in the game, Smite. On October the 29th, 2012, Google honored what would have been his 70th birthday with a Google Doodle, showing him painting the letter G into a landscape. His face has been used for toys, t-shirts, mugs, puzzles, and a board game called The Art of Chill. A Chia Pet with his famous hairstyle was also released. There were plans to make a Bob Ross video game for Nintendo Wii and DS, though it was never finished.
Despite his legendary status in the annals of pop culture history today,
a new wave of interest in Bob's work came in 2015, when Twitch Creative aired a 9-day marathon of the joy of painting to celebrate what would have been his 73rd birthday. Over 5.6 million people tuned in. The marathon was so popular that Twitch started rebroadcasting one full season of the show every Monday. Part of the ad money went to charities, including St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. In 2016, Netflix added his show Beauty is Everywhere to their lineup. These were 30-minute episodes from seasons 20 to 22. The surprise rise in popularity even shocked the Kowalskis, who were in charge of Bob Ross Inc. They quickly started a YouTube channel, which passed 1 million subscribers within a year. A streaming channel called The Bob Ross Channel was launched too, showing reruns of his show 24 hours a day. It's available on several platforms like Roku, DirecTV Stream, and Peacock. People also became curious about his original paintings. The New York Times reported that Bob Ross Inc. still holds most of them, but they hadn't stored them the way valuable artwork is usually kept. Recently, in 2023, the movie Paint was released. Actor Owen Wilson played Carl Nargle, a character based on Bob Ross. The film showed what happens when another artist challenges the calm, soft-spoken host of the #1 painting show. Even though Bob is no longer with us, his legacy lives on. In museums, in games, on shirts, and in the hearts of fans, new and old. And what's most powerful is that he never asked to be famous. He just wanted to paint happy little trees and help people believe in themselves. And somehow, that made him unforgettable. Do you think Bob Ross's legacy was honored the way he would have wanted after his death? And how do you feel about the legal battle over his name and image? Was it fair to his family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.